Alicia Ball. I'm an English teacher here at Celina High School, and behind me you can see that we are loading up the toys for the 2020 Dayton Children's Toy Drive. We started back in November collecting toys, but this is actually year 11. To date we have donated over 14,309 toys, and we are extremely excited to add close to 600 to our total yet again this year. Our toy drive looks a little bit different as with everything in 2020, but we're really excited and very thankful to everybody that's donated and kept our cause alive for yet another year. Merry Christmas!
Good evening and welcome to the regularly scheduled Celina Board of Education meeting for December 21st, 2020. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education and the public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business. It's not considered a public meeting. There is time for public participation, however, as the meeting is indicated in the agenda. I'd like to call the meeting to order and join me please for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call please, Mr. Sauer.
Mr. Flack.
Present.
Mr. South.
Here.
Mrs. Gingrich.
Here.
Mrs. Voorhees.
Here.
And Mr. Huber.
Here.
I noticed Mr. Huber wasn't facing the flag when he did the Pledge of Allegiance, but thank you for participating anyway.
Who's facing my
Okay.
He does have a flag as well, let the
There we
record
go.
say. The Patriot right there.
I'll entertain a motion to set the agenda.
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
Is that Clark?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Mr. Flack.
Yes.
Mrs. Voorhees.
Yes.
Mr. Huber.
Yes.
Mrs. Gingrich.
Yes.
Mr. South.
Yes. This time it's reception of the public, and first on our list is a presentation by Garmin Miller and Associates. And we'll go with Mr. Voltel. Would you mind introducing your crew, please?
Sure. Is this on?
I think so.
So I'm Eric Waltzell with Garmin Miller. With me tonight is Wayne Coleman, Matt Hibner, Wes Arno, and Doug Rentz. So tonight we just want to review with you your master plan options, look at your facilities project, how things maybe have changed, and let you know options moving forward and answer any questions. So,
You should probably sit out here. Or,
yeah, sure.
I'm just gonna follow along this way.
So today's agenda, we want to talk about the timeline, review your previous bond issue, talk about what's changed, what updates there are, and talk about options moving forward. So tonight, really what needs to happen is it's not a resolution, it's not a final decision. It's more a consensus, one way or another, whether you believe as a board you want to consider a May ballot or do you want to hold for now. And you'll find out more as we talk, the reasons for that. We have a short window of time to iron out the final details and the final pricing and millage and get you that information to allow you to make a final decision. And so the first thing that would need to happen if you do choose to consider a May ballot is we need to meet with the state right away and just iron out those details and get our questions answered from them. Since they are a co-owner and contributing a significant amount of money, we need to make sure we understand fully the scope of the project from their perspective and what their contribution is. From there, the deadline to submit to your Mercer County auditor is January 22nd, where they'll finalize their portion of the financials, and then February 3rd is the submission to Board of Elections. So you'll have to have, prior to that, board action. So just a scenario, if the consensus is yes, we want to consider a May ballot, we would compile the final information of what that would look like to present to you, and then prior to January 22nd, you could vote on whether you are moving forward or not. So just a review of your previous master plan, and this is the scope of what was included back in the spring. It was renovation of your 5-6 building and adding on, in addition, to make it a PK6 intermediate school. Then there would be a new 7-12 school building and abatement and demolition of the buildings listed there, primary, elementary, middle, high, and education complex. Now, the high school and education complex would be partial demolitions, and we'll get into that on the next slide with LFIs. So outside of the co-funded project, you're able to identify local funded initiatives of other things you want to do outside of the state scope. And this list is what was listed as your primary LFIs in the last bond issue. These were the LFIs that you identified as had to happen with the LFI dollars. You'll notice at the bottom, highlighted in green, demolished primary and elementary schools. This was listed as a LFI in some of the campaign language, but it is a co-funded item. That's why that's pointed out differently. The next slide is what we call secondary LFIs. So this was the list of items I call it a wish list, that if funds allowed, you want to do as many of these as possible. And one thing I should have noted on the previous slide, and it's on this slide as well, those numbers in parentheses, that comes from your planning committee meeting that you had whenever the planning committee took votes of what were the most important items. And those represent the number of votes for each one of those. So the financial summary, next slide here is your rank at that time. Your OFCC equity rank was 340 out of 612 public schools. That means you had a 56% local share. State share was 44% of the co-funded scope. So your contribution total was $69,246,475. That breaks down to $44 million of it was co-funded portion and $24.8 million in LFI, and the state was contributing $34.9 million. That equated to property tax of 7.4 mils. The language in the bond was a maximum of 38 years. There's a half mil in addition that's requirement of OFCC for a maintenance set aside. And in the campaign, it was noted that the 3 mils from your previous bond was coming off the books at the end of 2020. So what's that mean to a $100,000 home? 7.9 mils equates to $276.50 per year. That was at the time of the spring bond issue. That came right from the campaign language. So what's changed in your updated master plan? Enrollment has increased. We got updated enrollment projections, and that shows an increase in enrollment over your next 10 years. OFCC budget costs have changed. So it's been a couple years now that the OFCC hasn't updated their cost sets. They apply inflation factors from time to time, and the costs have changed. Then equity rank, your equity rank continues to change for the good. In 2020, you went to a 329 ranking on the equity list, which equates to 54% local share. And in 2021, you'll move to 309, which is 51% local share. So these things are fluid and changing, and timing is everything with OFCC to make sure you are getting the right plan in the most maximize your dollars from the state. Get your share that's due to you with your ranking and enrollment and all those things. So when you compare the master plans, you'll see on the left your previous master plan enrollment was 2708, 56% local share. And these square foot costs you see, those were the square foot costs used between elementary, middle school, and high school for the state to determine the cost of your building. So they take the number of students, there's a certain formula for so many square foot per student, that gives them the program and how big your buildings are, and that's how they determine your budget. So your total co-funded project was $79 million at that time. So what was sent out last week from the state to the district as an updated master plan showed an enrollment of 3,025. Your local share moved to 54%, but you see that the cost sets never changed. And they showed a total co-funded project of over $94 million. And this is why we said you didn't want to approve it just yet, because if you would have locked in, you were locking in at costs that were still from 2019. And you'll see on the next slide that just today they sent over another update to the district. Enrollment stayed essentially the same, it changed by 2 students. They show your local share at 54%, but now you can see they have applied an 11% increase to the cost set, which is something we knew was coming this year. So that makes your total co-funded $98 million. Now, we'll get into this a little bit, but we know that in April, they're talking about another cost set adjustment. They will not divulge if they know exactly what they're going to make that, but we're assuming it's going to be somewhere around 5%, give or take. And then in July is whenever you would move to that 51% local share.
Can we talk real quick, Eric, about that enrollment? Because that surprised me. Again, I'm new, but all we heard about, I was a veteran of the campaign, is the enrollment's going down. Everyone's moving out of the district. So where did these 300 and some odd new students come from previous plan? Is that true? There's some conjecture, maybe it was TriStar numbers. What's our numbers there?
There's a blend of that, but they're also taking into consideration the housing that's happening. you drive down Myers Road and see
Yeah.
all those apartments coming in, you know, that's going to increase the population here in the city.
So those, just to be clear, that enrollment's not an actual number, those are projected enrollment.
That's your 10-year projection.
So we have to build off of projected enrollment numbers rather than what we actually have in the community?
Correct.
Also, Mr. Marcel, if we lock in at a certain dollar amount and they come out and say in July, would that be the last time that they come out with a new percentage of inflation or adjustment?
On the costs?
Yeah, are we in any kind of local responsibility as far as dollar amount if the inflation rate goes up after we certify that we're going to run a certain project and take it to the auditor and the Board of Elections?
Yeah, to some extent. So the OFCC will tell you that the master plan is what it is once you lock into it and once you move forward. So let's say that by the time you get to the construction, whatever time frame that is between your bond issue and the design and actually getting bids, if something happens within markets that there is unusual inflation that you weren't covered, generally it's up to you to cover. So you're either going to cut some things from your scope of your work to get back on budget, or you're going to have to put more money in. Now, you know, with 11% and another 5% on top, I would certainly hope, at least for the foreseeable future, you're covered within a reasonable time. That yes, if there would be something above and beyond that, it's on the district to cover it. It's very hard once you lock in. That's why it's so important. Once you lock into what the state share is, to get additional money from their end there's a lot of things to make that happen. So it's important to get it right from the beginning. And that's where we believe that even if you decide, hey, we want to look at a May ballot and we want to go that direction. Wayne was able to talk with your planner today since we got that updated master plan. Eugene is your planner. And he shared some things. He acknowledged that if you held off until July to get your plan approved, that you would be at that 51%, and he thought that would be wise. Also, by that time, that additional inflation, whatever it may be, if it is 5%, would be factored in. And that wouldn't necessarily hold you from continuing to move forward with the May ballot. We'll just have to work with the state to factor those things in so that you're going out for a local share to cover all those anticipated costs. And that would be the best of both worlds for you. You could go out and raise your local share. You time it so that in July you're getting your 51% and that additional inflation factor from the state.
So even if we chose to send a ballot and to send something about in May, that does not preclude us from getting an accurate construction number with the inflation numbers in there and getting the 49% state pay. Is that correct?
Right. Wayne wants to.
And I think one more thing to answer your question as far as inflationary numbers and to get into the project and how all of a sudden something can increase. When OFCC establishes their cost for construction, they use a 3-year average. So they take past year, present, and then a future year. So they've already forecasted that cost to go out another year. So it does help you balance that budget. The risk is when they would actually, so you lock in on your master plan, you're locked in for a year, and you're good to go. If their funding were to be delayed for 2 years, then you've kind of caught up to the, we'll say the high end of what that budget number was. So, and as Eric mentioned, sometimes districts get caught in that, And what they had planned on using some LFI dollars maybe for ends up being used to support the project. So you're promising your voters, we're going to build a school, it's going to be of this size, it's going to be done this way, and all of a sudden you're having to manipulate some of your monies to make sure you get what you said you were going to get. But the same thing happens with the LFIs. You start cutting the LFIs, you know, it's always that, well, you told us we were going to get something. So,
Is there an average that the OFCC timeline is for budgetary support? I mean, can we count on it, this thing would pass, I know we're in abnormal times, but is it usually 18 months, is it?
Doug, you want to go to the next slide?
yeah, sure, that'd be fun.
So it kind of ties with this. There's multiple programs through the OFCC. These are the two that would apply to you. Classroom Facility Assistance Program, CFAP, and Expedited Local Partnership Program L. CFAP was the program that you were under when you went out on your spring bond issue. That means that you were up for funding, it's your time in line. And recently, the way I've had it explained to me from OFCC, they put you in that program when you're within 2 years of being funded. Then the Expedited Local Partnership, there has been some issues recently with funding with the state where some districts that have raised their local share and that they were up have been waiting for some time to get the state share. So they've been, I would say, a little bit more flexible with this ELP program, but generally they tell you, you only can be in that ELP if you're outside of 2 years of being funded. So you say, hey, we're ready to go out now, and they say, well, you know, you're 3 years away, you can apply in that request to be in the expedited, and that's where you raise your local share, and you can go ahead and get started on the project, and then you would be credited back once your time comes up to be funded with the state.
Yeah, I think currently, in my discussion with Eugene today, I asked that specific question. You know, what are we looking at for funding here in the future? There is some money that's being applied for funding for 21, but it's going to the districts that had already passed their local share. OCC said, we don't have the money, I'm sorry. You can go ahead and do an expedited program, and then when we get the money, we'll come in and finish your district. And so that little bit of money they're getting, and I can't even tell you the total millions of dollars that they have, but that is going to be used to support those districts that were unable to get that funding. What that means then is that we're at least a year away from an offer of funding. On the good side of it, you are a lapsed district in the CFAP program, so you're at the highest funding position that you can be out of all the districts after they clean up kind of the mess they got themselves into here a little bit earlier. So that's the good news. Also, capital budgets, capital funding, that happens on even years. So in 2022, that's when we'll see capital funds being raised, and we're hoping that there'll be a significant amount of money that will be applied into OFCC for that. And traditionally, that's what they've received. It's just over the past couple of years, they got themselves into a mess, basically. And a lot of that was due to lapsed districts that were passing their levy, or their ballot, and saying, okay, we've got our local share. And then OCC didn't have enough funds to cover it.
Would you explain lapse district if anybody's watching?
Lapse district is you have a window of time once you get your plan approved. It's 13-month window. And if you cannot raise your local share within that 13-month window, then you become a lapse district. So for you, that happened September. September was when you became a lapse district. That was after the 13 months of your plan being approved. So that, when we talked about meeting with the state, that would be a topic of conversation is, hey, Celina is contemplating May, they're serious about looking at this. What direction should we go? Would they still be in the CFAP program, or would you suggest they apply for help? That's something we would try to get them to give us some direction on. And not to muddy the waters too much, but you'll notice within the CFAP there, you do have an option of a segmented program. So you can do a portion of your project, raise your local share for a portion of the project, and then do the second phase later on down the road. So what we did, just to give you some idea, so we've talked about an 11% increase that we know about for sure from the state, and we're projecting another 5%. So you need to factor those inflation rates into your LFIs. So we took 16% across the board on those, just to give you some idea of how those increase. But something that works in your favor, you'll notice on the last two, you, in the previous master plan, you wanted some additional square footage to fit your program that's above and beyond the state program. And because you have a greater, your enrollment is increased, that means you have a bigger building that's state funded. That means you need less dollars in the LFI to fund what you want to do. So there's a balance there. The increased enrollment makes it a bigger project, a bigger scope, but it's closer to giving you the buildings you need for what you were planning with more state contribution. So the next slide is just looking at the secondary LFIs, and I'll just mention that it's nice how you've done this with creating a list of must-have primary LFIs, and then secondary, that's kind of acknowledging that depending on how things go with the budget, we have this wish list, so you have some flexibility there.
Just for the folks watching online, these came out of all the community meetings. Now, those would have taken place in 2019, so they took place in all of the buildings, but we literally had clickers and voted and sat in working groups. And so if you're looking at your Facebook screen and going, well, I would have preferred a metal roof, versus that all of these came out of community involvement meetings. So these were chosen by Celina citizens, people that are doing that. So if you're wondering, well, they never asked me, that's where these came out of, where these working group meetings at all the different buildings in 2019. So just so you're clear where these kind of locally funded items, and that is why if you see like the top ones, for example, keeping the 1998 high school edition, what we're sitting in right now, and turning this into district space and Head Start, all of our folks knew that that was the fiscally responsible thing to do, creates that. But then also you look down to the fixed seat auditorium, that's a huge deal for a lot of people, and the community had to throw them out. So I just want to make sure that's clear for people watching online, because if I was watching and I didn't know, I'd go, well, who'd you ask, and where'd you get these things, and why are these priorities? They're priorities because that's what the citizens that came to the meeting said were the priorities.
So the next slide, we took just to help you understand the master plan we received today. The left side is your previous master plan from the spring, and then on the right is what we received today. So the one today showed the 54% local share, a co-funded total amount of $98 million. That was a $45 million state contribution, $53 million local share. Your LFIs came down to $22.8 million with that square footage, and that equates to a local share with LFIs and co-funded total to $75 million. So what are your options moving forward? You could choose to go back out with the full master plan, the same project scope as the last bond issue, and then we'd update the financials accordingly. You could consider a segmented plan, like I mentioned. Most likely, just based on need and some community surveys in the last few years, that would probably be the PK6 that would be first. So it would include the renovation of the 5-6 in addition to that. abatement demolition of the two, the primary and elementary, and that would still be a state co-funded project. And then you would just have to address the next piece of that project down the road when you felt the timing was right. Or your other option is to delay any facilities OFCC project for now. Those really, I think, are the choices moving forward. So we tried to show you best we could, and what these numbers represent are taking this most recent master plan and factoring in that 5%. And just for exercise purposes here, we started with the 54% local share. A full master plan project would roughly be about 78.6 million, and this is your local share that you would need to raise, 22.8 million of that being LFI. Now these are really rough numbers. I got a few millage estimates from our financial person that helps us. I don't have the exact one, so roughly it's going to be in the $7.5 mil range, which is roughly $255 per $100,000 home. This would be one of the pieces that we would work, once we move forward, that we would iron out the exact details for you to see. Next, we have what a segmented project would look like at 54% with the PK6. That'd be about 31.5 million locally, 9.1 million of that being LFI. So your LFI is smaller for the PK6 related.
Yeah, just a question.
Yeah.
Does that include the 5 mil, 0.5 mil operations that has to be included, or just?
Just the project.
Okay, so
not the half mil.
For example, the previous one would then become 8 mil. This
Right.
would be about 3.5.
Right.
Okay.
So that's 37-year bond, that's 2.99 mils, roughly $105 per year. So the next is taking both of those, looking at a 51% local share. The full master plan now comes down from 78.6 to 75.6. And that's roughly $245 per year tax. And then the next one is the PK6 at 51%, about 30 million. That's 2.89 mils, about $100 per year. So to give you maybe a little bit of a scale to help, this next slide just shows you a sliding scale, just giving you an idea of a few categories of what that equates to on an annual tax to help with your planning. You know, one thing that can be done is take another look at LFIs. I think if you decide you do want to look at a May ballot, that's something that needs to happen too. We need to talk to you as the district about, is that, you want to go with that same list? Do we want to refine that in any way? And that can also adjust what your total financial implications are.
Have you seen any districts do mixed funding to try and not just put it on property owners, but to do a income tax? What are our options? And I'm pretty sure it's just income online, because Mr. King and I have talked at length about this. I think it's just income and property that we can put forward to the voters, but have you done projects? What are we able to do there?
To my knowledge, your options are income or property. And we have had districts do an income, we've had them do 100% real estate, we've had districts do a combination. I'd say the vast majority are purely property tax, but there have been some that have chose income tax or a combination thereof.
What's the highest percentage you've had of income tax funded project like this, bond issue?
1%.
Maybe.
One?
So 1% income, the rest property.
understand that we did just drop off quite a bit of tax levy millage this past year, so we're looking at what we drop off, 3 mills, I believe.
This is a good point.
Yeah, it's like 1.1 effective millage, 3 mills when it got voted in. So everyone will be seeing their taxes decrease, because by the time, no matter what we choose to do, your taxes for 2021 property will decrease. Now, it might be offset if the county auditor raises them, so we'll see what happens, but that'll be their call.
Dr. Ken, is there anything that could change that as far as our property taxes going down in 2021?
Well, with the reevaluations out there, that could be a balance between the rural land and the homeowners in the city. So there could be some balancing out there.
So in other words, agricultural land could decrease, and that would have an effect on property owners inside a corporation limit.
Correct, because the levies that are out there will still collect the same overall amount of money.
Can't go anymore, just, gotcha.
Correct.
There's also some rumblings in the House that they might freeze property tax increases due to COVID. So they might have, Senator Huffman, our senator's pushing for that pretty hard right now. So that there might not be any increases, but that would be a state decision, so we'll see if they get that done. But just a FYI. When you guys look through our LFIs, to anyone that's looked at them, I know all you guys have been at it, is there stuff that you guys look at and think, yeah, that's something we might be able to be creative, or that's gonna be something we can remove, or is that really come down to us talking as a board for community intent, that you guys are kind of just, hey, whatever the project that the community decides, go forward? I mean, obviously the biggest one being the additional square footage at CIS being 5 million, that's a huge number. Is that something, as you guys look through a bigger facility, you obviously don't want to build a brand new school and then have it feel tiny or have not enough room in your classrooms, but locally funded, I mean, that's a quarter of our LFIs is just an additional square footage, so.
Yeah, I guess I'll give you my opinion on that, and I'll also get Matt as the architect, get him to give his opinion. On the square footage piece, that's one area I would not shortchange yourself. That is one that just about every one of the districts we work with adds a certain amount of square footage, almost always, because the program from the state, I would say, is kind of the minimum needed, especially in today's world with much more student-centered learning and project-based, a lot more breakout areas, small group rooms, extended learning areas, which is planned for your PK6. To provide that kind of individualized education, you really need those spaces. And so I would not, that's one area I would not shortchange.
Okay.
Now, there are other areas. I know a lot of times, like especially with the brick, if you can work things like that within your budget, a lot of times you can work it in with the budget you have. So setting it aside that this is something we have to have, you know, there's probably a conversation to be had there. Matt, I don't know if anything else stands out for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely echo Eric's comment about the overall square footage. That's an important piece, that learning component that we talked about in the program of requirements. I would definitely not shortchange that. So, but I do think, you know, there could be some opportunities, like Eric said, with the brick and everything as well, which we really try to work that within the original co-funded budget. So hopefully that you do have some savings there on your LFI side of things as the project progresses, and can lead to other opportunities, or just, you know, actually being able to hold that back and be under budget at the end of the project.
So what you're saying is, in your original design, you might try and submit that as a, hey, let's see if we can get this already in the budget where it's a normalized material. It might look better, and it could be a win-win without having to use it as an LFI type deal.
Correct.
You know, the other thing to remember too is that the materials that you have a choice of picking through that are co-funded, standing seam metal roof is typically co-funded. but it's at the high end of cost. Shingle roof is a little bit lower, flat roof, rubber roof is lower. So you have options as you go through. Brick, instead of full brick, which is co-funded, you can maybe use a split face block in a combination of brick or all split face block. The key here is that when you take the high end of all of the material lists, you probably will be over budget. And so what OSCC does is come back and say, you know what, you're over budget, you're gonna have to cut out this. Standing seam metal roof now becomes a shingle roof. You can't use all brick, it has to be this. So what we do is try to encourage, which you have done, is you try to set aside LFI dollars to cover a standing seam metal roof and brick. So the trick in the design is to get you the right design, and hopefully we can be under budget when it goes out for bid. And if it's under budget, the standing seam metal roof could be co-funded. The brick could be co-funded.
Right.
So it's all that balancing act as we go through. And so part of design, making sure that you're prepared to give what you've talked to the community about, those are held in LFIs. And the goal is to, when we get into construction and our bids come in, we can get more co-funding and offset that LFI.
Makes a lot of sense, thank you.
But I think there's definitely, that LFI discussion is something important to happen when you do choose to move forward, just to go through the list, make sure there are still priorities, make sure the numbers are right, maybe have those conversations. Are there some things that maybe fall off, or if it gets modified in some way?
Another piece that's within the budget that you may not readily know, there's contingency funds that are built into that budget. There's interest that you gain on your local share that's being held. That interest can sometimes offset, an over budget item. Used to be years ago that OCC would not allow you to use your interest money until the very end of the project. Well, that's kind of too late if you needed to do something during construction. So they loosened up on that. The only thing that's required from the district, if you were to use your interest money early, is that you need to provide some certification to the state that if you got toward the end of the project, you had a way of recouping that interest that you just used. So there's a little more flexibility with it.
Does the LFCC have any preference on, as far as the funding formula between property tax and sales tax? Does it matter at all to them?
Income tax.
I'm sorry, income tax. What did I say?
Sales tax.
Income tax. They don't care where the money's coming from?
No.
You just have to certify, I've got the money.
You're the government, man. You're gonna take it whatever way.
Dr. Kent?
One piece I wanted to clarify on the primary LFIs, you did mention there about the change the current bus garage to a parent parking lot at the pre-K 6 building. But the other piece that goes along with that, the 1984 TriStar edition, there used to be an automotive lab as part of that edition. That would then be upgraded and changed into our bus garage. So if people were looking at that and wondering, why is that TriStar edition listed on this? That's because we were going to be using that for our new bus garage.
Good point.
And the parent parking lot comes from any parent that's ever done pickup and drop off at any of our buildings knows that it is an abject nightmare. And so that was what came out of the meetings. Were like, no, we cannot construct new facilities and have pickup and drop off be what it currently is comprised of.
I asked the mayor one time, please, would you not send any police to the primary building because those women haven't figured out. Don't try to get in the middle of it. You'll get hurt.
It's got to take it's just like driving to Chicago. You take it, you got a gap, you go. You take it.
Hey Eric, I was just a little question pertaining to the numbers, the estimate numbers you have. Have those taken into consideration the most recent increase in materials that we've seen?
Yeah, yes, from an OCC perspective, they have built that into those numbers.
Those numbers are using the December 21st plan, so to speak.
Okay, because I know we've seen in the field of anywhere between 15 to 28% increase on certain materials.
Yeah,
And some of those permanent, some not, so that's why I was just curious if those would be
yeah.
addressed at all.
Yeah, just to clarify, those last 4 options with budgets that we showed that had the first 2 being 54% and the next 2 being 51%. That's, those numbers reflect a 16% inflation factor in there. It includes the 11%, and then we put an additional 5% guessing at what April's adjustment will be.
Because our goal is not to have to go to voters and say, oops, sorry,
Yeah.
we can't do that. Our goal is to deliver on what we promised to voters and not have to go back. Yeah.
If they, before question discussion. Yeah. Dr. Schmeezing's asking if you guys have any comments or input, questions. First, Mayor Hazel and President King and City Council, thank you for attending our meeting.
We certainly appreciate the opportunity to come and at least be a part of this initial phase. I think this is obviously a very important part of looking at the community and what can be done. So as you discuss what kind of phasing, whatever you want to do, I think it starts honing in on how it gets presented to the public and how the city can support as well. Because certainly, strong school, strong city. Dr. Schmeezing and I have talked about that. It is very important. But there's things the city should be able to do to also assist utility-wise, things along these natures that we certainly can work together on.
Good, appreciate that.
I just want to thank you guys for coming. Just to come and digest, it's a lot of information we're all taking in for the first time, so to have you guys, the worst thing we can do is not have each other know what's going on.
Absolutely.
So the best thing is to be sitting in the same room and hearing the same information, and obviously we have to make our decisions, but at least if we can all have that information, it's just, I really appreciate you guys coming.
And that's, it's a great point. We know you're seeing these for the first time. It's a lot to take in, and that's why tonight's not, it's not a final decision. It's just a consensus one way or the other of whether you think you want to look at a May ballot or not. If you do, then we would work with you and the state to get the numbers more refined so that you could see a final plan and then make the final decision in January.
So what you're saying is we need to talk amongst ourselves now to make sure that we're not sending you guys down a rabbit trail to make a lot of phone calls and do a lot of math that you don't need to do.
Yeah, I'd say if you know, it's a strong consensus of no, then let's don't contact the state and go down that route. But even if you lean towards yes and still need more information, I'd say that's a reason to make those calls and at least see where it goes.
I have a question for Mr. Farnham, not to put you on the spot, but you study politics and voting trends. And this is a leading question, so forgive me in advance. But wouldn't you think, Wes, in May, the voting public is going to be feeling more secure than they do now?
My answer to that question is yes. I think, excuse me, I think the voting public, the more information that they have, the better they're going to be. And we're in an information turmoil right now, whether it's on a presidential election or what Congress is going to do with stimulus. And I think by the time we get to May, we're going to have a pretty clear-cut vision of what is going to happen moving forward. So on a very grand scale, I would agree with that sentiment, yes.
You like where he led.
Yeah.
I think one thing I know, I was thinking about this as I pulled into my garage today. If I was just not as plugged in and I'm trying to pay my bills and get the kids to school and then I see on my Facebook page, Board of Education, building, there might be a little bit of shock of like, man, we just passed an operations levy and now you're just gonna do that. And I think two things. One, the operations was no new taxes. Just a reminder to people for that we just passed and we thank them for that. But also, we're making a decision about what happens in literally 5 months. 5 months is a ton of time, but we have to because these timelines are put on us to get something on the ballot. And so we would probably all love to wait till March if we could, but that's not an option for us if we want something on May. But also remember, if it feels like, well, no, May's right around the corner, that's like saying July feels like right around the corner. Now, July was 5 months ago, and it feels like a year and a half ago. And so I think that kind of just to breathe, and I think that's why I would agree with your sentiment, Wes. May at the very least should have better weather. So to say what we'll know is going to feel like 5 months from now, I think we can obviously all hope for that. I'll just speak for myself. I don't know how you want to handle it, Mr. Sell. I think we should at least move forward with whatever plan we decide to do. I'm in favor of moving forward to something on May ballot. I doubt it'll come as a shock for anyone who's known me being involved in the last levy campaign. I don't think our facilities represent the best of what Celina can do. I don't think our facilities represent the best of what we should offer to our students. When I pick up my daughter, who's in 2nd grade, from a building built in the 1950s, that 70-year-old folks that attend my church went to the same school as my 8-year-old. I don't think that represents the best of who we are as a community, and I think we can do better. And when someone offers to pick up 50% of the bill, I think that's a offer you have to look at seriously, and also recognize this is not going to go away. We're going to have public schools. The facilities will only get older. We literally have no more debt on the books. There's no more bonds on the books. We paid off all debt, and so this is not us considering, man, you're still paying down something. So as far as our district being in a position, it feels like now's the time before it keeps getting 11% more expensive year after year after year. So that's just kind of where I stand.
I would agree. I think my position is it's not something that we necessarily want to spend money on, but we feel that we need to invest in the children of the school district. I mean, and that comes to being necessary rather than just a want, and that's where I am. It's something that, and the longer we delay it, the more it costs. Mrs. Voorhees, Mrs. Skivich?
Well, I think everybody knows that my philosophy has always been the school should be the center of the community, bottom line. And this community needs better schools to become a better community. It's a package deal. That's my stand. We've got to start moving up.
I'm in agreement. I think we've made some good decisions holding off in the past. I think that was a smart thing to do. I think it was the right thing to do. But I mean, we can only hope that things get better, but we can't keep waiting.
Right.
It's
Mr.
just
Huber?
for the perfect time, because there will never be
Right.
a perfect time.
Yeah, I agree. It is once again time to give it a try. We don't know unless we put it out there. I'm always for any school levy that comes across of ours. It's for the betterment of our community and our kids. That's all we have in life. So if we don't at least try and give them what they deserve, then shame on us.
Yeah.
So yeah, we need to proceed.
And I think we can all say, whether people were for or against the levy that ran in March, the governor did not do us any kindness with canceling the election less than 24 hours before it was going to happen, promising the voters an IOU, having the State House, and I'm just replaying, these are facts, having the state of Ohio not have a new date established for well over a week, the governor going on Ohio TV telling the voters it would be in June, the state of Ohio coming back and saying it would be April 28th, the rest of us being told to stay home for 2 weeks. I don't think that made for a very democratic election this past year, and so those are the facts. Whether you're for or against the levy, that I don't think really represented a great temperature being taken. And so that was just a mess of all messes. And so I think even just thinking through that, giving the voters an opportunity to go to the polls, to vote early, to do these things at a normally established time. May is not a special election, there's nothing with that. Doesn't cost the district anything to run. There's some value, and really, I think letting the people be heard in a quote-unquote normal, hopefully.
There was as much risk in November voting this year as there was last spring. I mean, and we understand that now. I guess at the time, he didn't know that, but it didn't help us at all. But there's where we're coming from, all five of us. And it's informal, and that's the way it has to be. But
Yeah. We will contact the state. We'll work with Dr. Schmeezing to keep him informed and work on getting this refined and getting you a plan to review in January to then make a formal decision.
very good thing.
So we have our meeting January 16th, is that correct?
About the 11th.
January 11th. January 11th. So that would be a time, would that be a time we would know some of those numbers that we could have another discussion, or would that be too soon?
We'll have to see. That might be pretty aggressive.
Just because of the holidays, it's going to be tough.
Honestly, our biggest hurdle is when can the OCC find time for us. We'll do our best to make that happen.
If we have to do a special meeting after that, we could, but.
Yeah, we'll just do a special meeting if we need to. I think that'd be,
Okay.
give them time to get back their numbers, and then we'll proceed from there.
Any final questions, any board members, or
No. Thank
Mr.
you
Hayes,
for the
Mr. King,
presentation.
anyone?
Thank you, appreciate that. Is there any way you could send a PDF of this to the board that we could then make public for the public?
Yeah, sure can.
Thank
Good
you.
idea.
No problem.
That'd be great.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy the city council meeting.
What was it, the old Knowlton ditch fund that we had a bond on?
Oh, my gosh, yes.
45.
That shows your age, just.
I find that out. What is this?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much for
Have a
the
good night.
invitation.
I'll take a 5-minute recess here if anybody needs to,
Take a 5-minute recess.
yeah, if anybody needs to
Use the restroom.
hit the facility.
Can you pause us, Jonathan? Yep. Thank you, sir.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Happy holidays.
Amount of viewers.
Good.
Good.
30.
We'd like to go ahead and continue the Board of Education meeting after our reception of the public and the presentation by Garmin Miller. At this time, there is no one here from either the CEA or OPSI. Let's go ahead to the approval of the consensus agenda.
Motion.
It's by Mrs. Gingrich. I'll second that. Mr. Summer?
Okay, item number one, asking you to approve the minutes of the November 16th, 2020 regular meeting and the November 24th, 2020 special board meeting. Approve the November financial summary report showing just over $2 million in revenue and $5.65 million in expenditures. The expenditures are rather high because $3.2 million of that was debt retirement. So that brings that number down quite a bit if you factor that in.
Good.
Yeah, so that's the millage we talked about earlier.
Right. Yeah, the
Bond retirement.
school debt is retired. We are still the fiscal agent for the TriStar debt, but that's a partnership debt. We're just a fiscal agent, so it's not technically our debt.
We just have, what, $500,000, I think, is what Celina residents are paying on that?
No, I think it's close to $1 million right now.
$1 million, okay.
Approve the investment control report as of November 30th, 2020 with an ending balance of just over $9.1 million. Approve the November 2020 SM2 report. Approve the November 2020 checks written for $5.33 million. And then I'm asking you to approve supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 21, and this is just a result of the new Head Start funding, which starts December 1st. This was the amount of money that the feds approved us for half the grant. So it's $993, or $993,429 in supplemental appropriations. One activity budget for the 2019-20 school year. That's the precision machining out of TriStar. Resolution authorizing the continued participation in the OSBA Legal Assistance Fund at a cost of $250. Asking you to increase the student summer help wages under 21 years old from $870 to $880 per hour. And that's effective 1/1/2021. Authorize the renewal of the school district's membership in OSBA, and it's based upon our ADM and equates to $8,229 for calendar year 2021. And then we have the following donations: $500 from Brian and Susan Maloney to the Celina FFA, $1,000 from MVP Gary to Celina FFA to purchase the FFA jackets, $1,565 from an anonymous donor to the Caring Closet at the Celina High School, $1,500 from the Cooper Family Foundation, and that's to award 3 V.H. Cooper scholarships. And then $2,500 from the Mercer County Civic Foundation for the Chicago trip, and $600 from Asset Allocation Associates towards the spring musical.
We always approve the activity budgets for TriStar.
We approve all the activity budgets for all Celina programs, and since TriStar is now.
Okay. I don't recall doing it a year ago, but we probably did.
That should say 2021 instead of 1920.
20, good point. Questions?
Is that Chicago trip still on?
At this point, it has not been canceled.
Okay.
Dr. Schmeezing?
With the assistant superintendent's reports, we do have 4 substitutes we're asking you to approve. Item number 2, have the resignation of Nancy Vanderhorst. She's been the library aide at the middle school. She's been with us now for 32 years, so thank you very much, Nancy, for all those years of service.
I miss her.
We're asking you to approve a 60-day probationary contract for Lydia Volkheim as a teacher assistant, but also for the EL liaison position. Then under number 4, change of contract for Lisa Burgoon. She's switching from cafeteria worker to the custodian at the Ed Complex. 5 hours to 8 hours. She is now working, so she's completed her 30-day probationary period. Numbers 5 through 8, we're asking you to approve the hires of Sandy Ranley, teacher assistant at the elementary, Brianna Thomas, teacher at Head Start, Melissa Sinning, teacher assistant at Head Start, and Cherish Hardings, teacher assistant at the primary going.
The superintendent's report, Dr. Ken.
Moving on, we're changing the numbers on this. As you see, it went 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5, 5. So under personnel, if you could renumber those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. First, for number 1, Dan Udorf is asking us to approve him to be a substitute for the remainder of this school year. 2 and 3, we have resignations. Alyssa Van Overstratton, the IT cybersecurity teacher at TriStar, and also the resignation due to retirement of Tim Busher, TriStar director, effective August 1st of 2021. Pending contingencies as stated in the attachment. Item number 4 then, approve a 19-month administrative contract for Kim Kramer. She will be the Family Engagement Services Manager at Head Start, effective January 4th, 2021 through January 31st, 2022, of course, pending her background check. And on the next page, we'll start with number 5. Asking you to approve a stipend payment of $1,500 to Tess Watson, as she will be the esports club advisor for this school year. Payment for that is coming out of the Title IV federal grant fund.
What's a e-sport?
It's more the gaming, so it's a technology piece. So the students that are doing well in that are earning college scholarships. So we do have a good amount of interest from students to be involved in that.
So it's literally like a video game.
That is correct, yes.
Man, my high school heart is singing right now. Where was that?
You would have never got your degree. Or
Yeah, probably not. All right. Thank you.
Could have got in on the first step there.
I might have been varsity in something for the first time in my life, but all right.
If you're interested in getting an unpaid coaching position.
Hey, maybe that is. I might have to come out.
There you go. Number 6, approve Joelle King to teach extended school year services for identified students as needed. Number 7, approve a stipend payment of $29.50 per class. Amber Sinclair and Sarah Zapka are teaching yoga classes for our staff members. So board members, if you're interested in yoga, there's a possibility for you as well, being paid by the wellness funds. And the last item, number 8, approve the following athletic workers for this school year: Nate Boley and Josh Razavir.
Any other questions? I guess for Joelle King to be teaching extended school year services, does that mean summer school?
Under a normal year, that would be correct. Now, remember, we go back to March, and there were some services for some students that were missed because we couldn't be face-to-face. So we are continuing to make up some of those services that those students require.
Okay.
Heading on with the resolution, approved to change the Head Start administrative compensation plan for the mental health manager factor from 0.56 back to the original 0.55. Now we just made that change from 0.55 to 0.56 last month. Well, there was a 1% cost of living, or the COLA, was in there, so that threw those numbers off, so the 0.55 was actually correct. So we're going back to that original number. The Head Start monthly report is attachment number 5. Under Under TriStar, here we've got some more donations. 1997 Ford Econoline van from Dax Gruber, valued at $1,149 for the TriStar Auto program. A donation of $8,651 worth of equipment and books to the Animal Sciences program at TriStar. That's from Beverly Anders and the County Animal Clinic. And number 3, approved to accept a donation of $40,000 to the TriStar 2.0 building project from Celina Aluminum Precision Technology. This is the 3rd of 5 installments that CAPT has committed to the TriStar building project. One of the items under the other business by the board administration is an appointment of a president pro tem to serve until a president is elected for 2021. So basically that'll serve from January 1st through our meeting January 11th. Mr. Sell, I will let you take over with that.
Do we need a motion for the President Pro Tem tonight then?
Unless we would hold another meeting in December, we do not have one planned at this time. So yes, we would need that tonight.
I'd make a motion for Mr. Sell to continue as President Pro Tem until our organizational meeting.
I'll second it. Okay, Carl.
My bad. I guess maybe we need to put the brakes on. Tom didn't stop me. We actually should probably approve the consensus agenda before we take this next step.
Okay.
My apologies.
Good point.
Thank you, Tom.
If there's no items to,
I thought maybe you were just gonna include it in the.
anything removed from the consensus agenda?
No.
Okay, approval of the remaining consensus agenda items. Thank you, Mr. Summer.
Okay. Mrs. Gingrich.
Yes.
Mr. Sell.
Yes.
Mr. Huber.
Yes.
Mrs. Voorhees.
Yes.
Mr. Flack.
Yes.
Now we're ready for the,
Now I'd make that motion for Mr. Sell to continue as President Pro Tem.
And I'll second it.
roll call, please.
Okay, Mr. Flack.
Yes.
Mr. Huber.
Yes.
Mrs. Gingrich.
Yes.
Mrs. Voorhees.
Yes.
Mr. Sell.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. We'll continue with informational items, Dr. Kim.
Sure. The first thing I wanted to share, we did receive back the special education profile, and very pleased again, Tracy Demeyer got us up to the highest level, which is meets requirements. So highest level again for our special education services. A lot of timelines to meet with all of the meetings, talking about IEPs and ETRs. So yes, Mrs. Demeyer is leading that, but we have so many intervention specialists, teachers, assistants that are working with these students across the district. So certainly want to say something positive about all the efforts that they're putting forth across the district. The second piece I'd like to read from State Support Team 6. Celina was chosen for the 2020 Ohio Leadership Advisory Council District Award because of their use of the leadership framework. Shared responsibility is evident through their leadership meetings. In fact, their leadership focus this year is support and accountability. They have taken action steps in the area by modeling the use of the Ohio improvement process at every team level, promoting collective teacher efficacy and updating communication protocols to promote a clear flow from the DLT to the TBTs and back. Well done, Celina. So right behind us, you'll see one of the banners, and we will have those banners posted in all of our school buildings. 2020 Outstanding District Award winner, presented to us by OLAC and also the Buckeye Association of School Administrators.
That's excellent.
Thank you.
Will we have those banners set outside in front of the school buildings?
They'll actually be indoors, but they'll be posted, close to the entrance, pretty much in every school building. Where we did have the banners up for being the Momentum Award winners So those are being replaced now by the newer Outstanding District Award winner banners.
Is there any way we could appropriate some funds to put one outside of, on the east and west side? Just order two, one in front of the high school, one in front of, say, the elementary school?
Sounds like a great idea.
Sounds like a good one to me.
Let's not hide it.
Yeah, well,
Social.
you know, a little bit more visible.
I was gonna say, social media, we need to hit that too.
Yeah.
I think
So
you can get out there.
is that something we could do, just order some good sized outdoor ones?
Yes.
Well done.
Yes. Where are we, Dr. King?
Our January organizational meeting, this is on page 4, item number 1, will be held January 11th. Again, our regular start time is 6 p.m. We have to hold that before January 15th. With McKernan Brothers selling, we will be purchasing our milk from Reinhardt Dairy for the remainder of the school year. Now, Reinhardt Dairy is a member of the Southwestern Ohio EPC, so that's the reason we did not have to go out for bids.
Where are they out of?
Fort Recovery, I believe.
I think so.
Yes.
Item number 3, Celina City Schools has been approved to continue serving free meals for the remainder of the school year. We are also approved to offer free meals to all students through the month of June 2021. With the meals made available via drive-through at the high school, the pickup dates will also be Tuesdays and Thursdays, and that will be during the month of June. So that will be the same as last summer when students were getting 2 meals, I believe, on Tuesday and 3 meals on Thursday.
We ran a little longer in the summer though last year, correct?
It went all summer, didn't it?
Yes.
I believe it pretty much
Yeah.
did
Yes, it
go.
did.
Yeah.
I think it was most of the
It
summer,
was most of summer and then starting in the fall again,
I believe.
yeah.
The Franklin B. Walter Scholarship Banquet has been scheduled for Wednesday, April 7th, 2021. That's scheduled for 6:30 at Romer's Catering in Celina. They wanted to make sure to get that on the schedule. We will continue to see how things unfold as we get closer to that date. If it'll be in person, it may end up being a virtual event.
I was canceled last year. How did they end up handling the scholarship handout?
I believe, if correct, each of the schools did it virtually with their awards ceremonies.
Okay.
This time we're ready for executive session. If there's questions to any of the above items, if not, we'll go into an executive session.
I'll move for executive session based on employment number 2.
Okay?
I'll second.
Second, Mrs. Voorhees. Mr. Summer?
Mr. Flyer,
Yes.
Mrs. Voorhees,
Yes.
Mrs. Gingrich,
Yes.
Mr. Huber,
Yes.
Mr. Sell.
Yes. Since we have Mr. Huber here, it might be 6:20, might be best if we stay in here. We are going to reconvene the Board of Education meeting of December 21st, 2020. We just came out of executive session. We were doing evaluations. It took a long time, and they were very positive, and we are pleased to tell everyone we are going to now adjourn the meeting, but we're going to say Merry Christmas to everyone first. Thank you to Mr. Flack for that reminder.